Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Horowitz, in your office report, you noted that during the interviews, some in your office staff were evidently told that some DEA employees were under the impression, at least, that they were not to discuss information regarding open cases. Do you know who provided that information?
We don't know who told them that information, but that is, in fact, what we were told.
All right. So did you ever determine whether or not the DEA staff, in fact, someone communicated that information?
We didn't determine definitively whether it occurred. We believe it did occur, given we were told that by several individuals.
All right. So you were told by several individuals. That was not an isolated incident. All right. So you did not investigate further?
We did not.
Okay. Ms. Leonhart, did your office ever give information, instructions to that effect?
No, my office didn't, and when the report, I saw the draft asking the Office of Professional Responsibility and Inspections about that, they said that there was a miscommunication. They were under the belief that closed cases were not a part of what Mr. Horowitz's audit would cover.
All right. Well, there was obvious confusion. Did you yourself at any time ever give instruction to anyone to withhold information?
Absolutely not.
Did anyone in your staff?
No, no one in.
How do you know?
Because we weren't involved in that part of the process.
Well, then you can't definitively say that no one did it. If you weren't involved in the process, I mean, obviously there were reports, there was testimony given to Mr. Horowitz's team that your employees were instructed not to give information.
The inspectors that were interviewed received instructions from OPR and the Office of Inspections. I have no information about what information was relayed to them other than it was relayed.
All right, so you don't know
confusion
is the bottom line. You don't know if that information was relayed or not. Let me, Ms. Leonhart, you're all over the board today. You say you can't fire anyone and that you didn't have all the facts, and yet you send information that this behavior is not going to be tolerated. It's absolutely all over the board. You have junior officers who evidently can fire, but you cannot fire. Do you have any authority over them? Can you fire those junior officers?
If they are not doing their job, they can be replaced, and that is done by the.
Did they do their job
board.
by not disciplining appropriately in this situation?
I'm disappointed in the discipline. I think that it's not enough.
So why were those junior officers not replaced?
Again, I can't interfere with the disciplinary process, but I can make sure through our career board that replacements or people that are coming up to take those positions are of utmost.
So do you or do you
integrity.
not have any authority over the junior officers?
I don't have the authority to intervene in the disciplinary process.
All right. A moment ago, you said you would act differently if you had this to do all over again. Why in the world would you say that? It seems that you've made it clear today that your hands are tied, that you can do nothing. I'm really having a difficult time understanding. It appears to me that no one listens to you, quite frankly. You write a letter saying this behavior is not going to be tolerated, and yet you have no influence as to whether that behavior is going to be tolerated or not. Did anyone listen to you when you wrote that letter?
Yes, the entire workforce listened to me, and in fact, like me.
Why would they listen to you if you have no influence whatsoever on the disciplinary process? Ms. Leonhart, I've just got to tell you, you say you're in charge of discipline on one hand, then you come back and you say you have nothing to do with discipline. You're in charge of the entire agency. Then you come back and say you have nothing to do with correcting problems. Quite honestly, I have serious questions as to your competence, quite frankly, and it appears to me that we need to seriously consider new leadership at the DEA. And I yield back the balance of my time.
Before the gentleman yields back, I'd like to give Mr. Horowitz an opportunity to respond to the questions that Mr. Hice was asking earlier. If you could address that directly, Mr. Horowitz.
Sure, certainly. With regard to the production of information and answering questions, again, the frustration we had with both the FBI and DEA during this process was we kept having to go back and ask for more once we learned what we weren't told originally. That was the case with regard to documents. We got redacted information. I had to elevate it in both instances months after this all started. With regard to the interviews, we learned later in the process that certain individuals at DEA that we had interviewed hadn't told us about an open case because of their understanding that they shouldn't talk about an open case. We found out that when we did get productions from both the FBI and the DEA that they didn't give us everything. We only learned that because we went back and checked our own records to compare and see if we had everything whether they provided us with everything that we already had. We thought they had even more than we had, which is why we went to them in the first instance for the information. But then we found out that the production was incomplete. We then had to go back and ask for a further review. And then after we did the draft report, we found out that the DEA hadn't run all the search terms we had done without telling us that they had made that decision on their own. So we had multiple instances where that occurred. It delayed our report. I can assure you it frustrated the good, hardworking folks in my office who spent months just trying to get information. And I will go back to what I said earlier. The ATF and the U.S. Marshal Service, we asked made the same requests of them. We got the material, and we got it fast. And we never thought we didn't get from them what we were entitled to. That should have happened across the board, and it should be happening across the board in all instances.